Imagine having a multi-million-dollar, fully finished television just, sitting on a hard drive.
Right. Just collecting digital dust.
Exactly. And the only reason you can't release it is because an anonymous hacker, like halfway across the world, says they will do it for you if you don't meet their demand.
It is literally the modern entertainment industry's ultimate nightmare scenario. I mean, you have thousands of hours of labor, tens of millions of dollars in investment. Just
the entire future of a beloved franchise hanging in the balance, all vulnerable to, a single compromised password?
Yeah, pretty much. It fundamentally changes the power dynamic of media. We always operate under this assumption that massive conglomerates hold all the cards, right?
Right, that they dictate when and how we consume art.
Exactly. But when a digital asset of that magnitude is compromised, the entire corporate apparatus, the marketing teams, the merchandising partners, the streaming executives, they're suddenly paralyzed.
Paralyzed by a threat they can't even see. And often can't negotiate. And that paralyzing vulnerability is really the epicenter of what we are looking at today. So, welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a heavy topic.
It really is. Today, our mission is unpacking a highly passionate, just intensely alarmed YouTube video from the channel Avatar Star. The video is titled Bad News for Avatar Studio.
And it is a very raw, unfiltered look into an intellectual property that is allegedly facing an absolute existential crisis.
Yeah, we are taking a magnifying glass for you guys today, looking at how this beloved franchise is currently being squeezed from three distinct, pretty ruthless fronts.
Right, you've got external cyber attacks holding completed projects hostage, touched on.
Yep. Then you have internal corporate realities wiping out unreleased video games.
And then on top of all that, a storm of deeply controversial creative mismanagement.
It's just a mess. But, when you cross-reference the claims in this specific video with the broader structural realities of the entertainment landscape right now,
it becomes much more than just a story about a cartoon or a video.
Yeah, it operates as a real-time case study, looking at fandom panic, the brutal financial math of corporate restructuring,
and the immense, sometimes just crushing struggle of trying to scale a handcrafted creative endeavor into a perpetual content machine.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the first major crisis detailed in the source reads less like a Hollywood trade update and more like a cyber thriller.
Oh, absolutely. We are talking about severe data breaches, leaks, and a very real digital hostage.
The video lays out this truly harrowing timeline. So about a month ago, the fandom was hit with a leak of an Avatar Aang.
Right, and the YouTuber notes that initially the community reaction was almost dismissive.
Yeah, like, oh, it's bad, certainly, but it's an isolated leak.
Exactly. Fans figure they'll look at the storyboard animatics or the unfinished renders, but they'll still show up for the final theatrical release, right?
Yeah.
Or stream it legally when it drops.
But the narrative shifted dramatically when the leaker actually went to the press. They went to the Hollywood Reporter.
Yeah, that was a wild move.
Right. They gave this extensive feature detailing the actual mechanics of the hack. And during that victory lap, they revealed their next target.
The psychological warfare aspect of that is just fascinating to me. Going to the press isn't just about leaking a file, it's about establishing dominance.
Oh, totally. And the target they named is Avatar the Seven Havens,
which the source identifies as the highly anticipated sequel set after The Legend of Korra.
And the threat escalates way beyond just a warning of a future breach. The leaker implies they already possess the entire thing.
The full season.
Yeah, the full season, or the full movie. The source uses the terms somewhat interchangeably, but the claim is that this completed project has just been sitting on the studio's servers for months.
Potentially up to a full year, according to
a year. And the ultimatum presented is chillingly straightforward, right? If things don't go the leaker's way, they are going to dump the master files online.
And the YouTuber, Avatar Star, claims without any hesitation that a premature dump of this magnitude would, quote, kill the brand immediately.
Wow. Okay, so to understand how a leak could supposedly kill an entire brand, we really have to look at the attack surface of modern digital pipelines.
Right, because the traditional image of a movie vault, a physical room with a heavy steel door and a security guard, that is entirely obsolete.
Completely gone.
Today, producing high-end animation involves petabytes of data distributed across these incredibly complex cloud networks.
Right, you have hundreds of visual effects artists, sound designers, color graders,
editors, and they're often working remotely or they're distributed across multiple vendor studios globally.
Which makes that structural reality, the vulnerability is almost inevitable.
It really is. Every single one of those remote artists requires an API key or a secure server access.
So if one tired animator working late in a different time zone falls for a spear phishing,
or if one third-party vendor hasn't updated their firewall protocols, the entire castle is...
The hacker doesn't need to break down the front door of Param. They just need to find the one unlocked side window at like a contracted audio mixing facility.
That is the architectural flaw of remote decentralized production. But the detail in the source that demands further scrutiny is the claim that a finished tentpole project has been sitting dormant on a server for up to a year.
Yeah, from a layperson's perspective, that just sounds negligent.
It sounds completely absurd.
If I could use a mechanical analogy here, for you listening, holding a finished, highly anticipated TV show on a server for a year is like having a massive fleet of fully loaded cargo ships just anchored outside a port.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Right. You have the goods, the public wants the goods, but you just leave them sitting out in open water where pirates can easily spot them.
Yeah.
Why on earth would a studio leave a primary asset so exposed for that long?
Well, extending your analogy, the ships are waiting because the port simply isn't ready to process the cargo.
Ah.
A project might be creatively locked, meaning the director has approved the final animation, the score is recorded, the voice acting is done, but it is nowhere near ready for the global.
So the bottleneck isn't the creative production.
No, not at all. It's the corporate distribution apparatus.
I really want to dig into the gears of that apparatus, because if you're listening to this and screaming, just put the leaked show on Paramount Plus right now.
You're not alone.
Yeah, that is exactly the YouTuber's proposed solution. Avatar Star is clearly operating from a place of panic.
Right. And their advice to the executives is essentially to beat the hacker to the punch.
Yeah, they argue that since the studio already got burned by the Egg movie leak, they need to release Seven Havens immediately. Put ads on it, throw it on the streaming platform, and just neutralize the threat.
But if I'm looking at the invisible corporate red tape involved, I have to imagine it's nowhere near that simple.
No, of course not. It is a completely natural, intuitive reaction from a fan, a fan who values the art over the commerce.
They just want to see the show in high definition rather than a compressed, pixelated pirate.
Exactly. But functionally, executing a sudden drop of a major franchise installment that's equivalent to financial self-sabotage for a publicly traded media company.
Walk us through the specific gridlock then. Why can't a media conglomerate just flip a switch and release something they already own?
Well, first, consider the licensing and merchandising ecosystem.
Right, the toys.
Yeah. An intellectual property of this scale doesn't just generate revenue from streaming subscription. It relies heavily on physical products.
Okay, that makes sense.
The studio coordinates with international toy manufacturers who require a massive lead time. We're talking often 12 to 18 months to design, mold, manufacture, and ship action figures and apparel.
Wow, 18 months.
Yeah, so if Paramount drops the show tomorrow, those products are still sitting in a factory in Shenzhen.
Oh, I see. By the time the toys hit the shelves at Target or Walmart 6 months from now, the cultural conversation has completely moved on.
Exactly. The hype is dead, and the merchandise revenue just collapses.
That makes a lot of sense. The show is essentially a gigantic multi-million-dollar commercial for the broader...
Bingo. If you air the commercial before the products even exist, you've wasted the entire investment.
Furthermore, there is the localization bottleneck. A global release requires the project to be dubbed and subtitled in, 30 or 40 different languages?
Right, and those localized audio tracks have to undergo their own rigorous quality assurance processes.
Then you factor in the marketing ad buys. Advertisers pay premium rates for scheduled, heavily promoted premiere events.
So if you panic drop a show on a Tuesday night with zero run,
you cannot command those premium ad rates. You also risk breaching complex syndication contracts with international broadcast partners who were, promised a simultaneous global rollout.
So the studio executives are truly trapped in a labyrinth of their own making.
Yeah, they are legally and financially barred from releasing the asset early without intentionally vaporizing millions of dollars in coordinated revenue.
But if they wait and the hacker executes the threat, the audience watches it on pirate site, the studio still loses that revenue. Plus, they suffer massive brand damage.
It is the definition of a no-win scenario. The leverage completely belongs to the bad actor here.
And this exposes a terrifying reality for the individuals tasked with running Avatar Studio. Their primary foundational mandate from the parent company is to protect and monetize the intellectual property.
Right. And if this source is accurate, they are currently failing to secure their completed investments.
Which naturally pivots us from their inability to protect finished projects to their alleged inability to actually begin the ones they publicly announce.
Yeah, the Phantom ARP.
This brings us to the second major crisis highlighted in the video. And this taps into a very specific, deeply frustrating phenomenon in the gaming.
The concept of vaporware.
Exactly.
It is an industry practice that routinely breaks the trust between developers and consumers. Yet it continues to happen with alarming frequency.
Wild. So to set the stage for you on the sheer scale of the disappointment documented in the source video, the YouTuber focuses on the cancellation of a highly anticipated AAA RPG.
And the pitch for this game was, frankly, a dream scenario for the community.
It really was. It was announced back in 2024 to be produced by Saber Interactive. And the YouTuber rightfully points out Saber's pedigree.
Right. They are responsible for massive, technically demanding games like Warhammer 40K, Space Marine 2, and World Wars.
Yeah, Saber even went on record describing this Avatar project as the most ambitious game in their company's history.
A statement of that magnitude from a studio accustomed to handling dense, large-scale properties that sets an incredibly high expectation floor.
And the creative concept matched that ambition. It was slated to be set thousands of years before the era of Aang, allowing players to embody a brand new avatar with the mechanical freedom to bend all four elements.
In an open-world setting, no less.
Yeah. The YouTuber calls it the grandest scope of a game this franchise has ever seen.
But the bubble burst dramatically just hours before the video was recorded.
Right. At Summer Games Fest, the head of Paramount Games Studio, Sean K. Deason, and note that this is a newly unified division. He spoke to IGN.
And he didn't just announce a delay or a pivot. He confirmed the game was completely canceled.
But the kicker, the detail that truly drives the YouTuber insane, is Katie Deason's admission that the game was never even in production.
That specific phrasing is what transforms this from a standard project cancellation into a profound betrayal in the eyes of her.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a case of studio attempting to build an ambitious engine, failing and cutting their losses.
No, it suggests they were essentially selling smoke.
The YouTuber's exasperation is just palpable. They ask the obvious question, like, why would they even announce it if it didn't even enter pre-production? Don't announce it if it's just an idea.
Right. Katie Deason's directly quoted as saying there had been plenty of, quote, aspirations at Paramount regarding this property before, but the conviction and the support behind them had been...
So what does this all mean? When I hear a corporate executive use the phrase, aspirations without conviction, my cynical translator immediately hears, the previous management liked the pitch deck, but absolutely refused to fund the budget. Am I off base there?
Not at all. Your translation is highly accurate. To fully decode that corporate speak, we really have to look at the tectonic plates shifting beneath Paramount right.
The mergers.
Yes. The source specifically mentions that Paramount Game Studio is a newly unified division, an entity cobbled together following the broader Paramount and Skydance corporate merger.
Corporate mergers, the ultimate stress test for any creative endeavor.
Precisely. When a merger of that scale occurs, the incoming leadership, in this case, the Skydance side, initiates an exhaustive financial audit.
They open the ledger.
They open the ledger and they scrutinize every single liability, redundancy, and risk profile. They're looking for immediate ways to trim the fat and appease shareholders.
Ah, so Katie Monson's quote about a lack of conviction and support is actually an indictment of the previous regime.
Exact. The old Paramount executives likely signed a preliminary memorandum of understanding with Saber Interactive. They probably funded a minimal amount of concept art or a target rendering to see what the game could look like.
And that is the aspiration.
Yes. But they never actually greenlit the multi-million-dollar development budget required to hire the coders and build the vertical slice.
They balked at writing the check.
Exactly. So when the new unified management team took over post-merger, they looked at this massive unfunded liability on the horizon, recognized it was essentially just an expensive promise with zero actual code written,
and eliminated it instantly to clean up the balance sheet.
Mergers consistently result in the immediate slaughter of projects that only existed in the conceptual phase.
Okay, I track the brutal financial logic of the cancellation. But this strategy of the initial 2024 announcement still totally baffles.
How so?
It feels like announcing you're running a marathon before you've even bought shoes.
Yeah.
If you are Paramount and you haven't actually funded the game, why would you stand on a stage and hype up a AAA RPG with Saber Interactive?
Because you know the fandom is rabid.
Right. You know they want this specific type of open world experience. Why intentionally invite the inevitable toxic backlash when you inevitably pull them?
This is where we have to reevaluate who the target audience for these announcements actually.
Okay.
Consumers inherently believe that game trailers and press releases are designed for them, right? To build consumer hype and drive pre-orders.
Of course.
But in the early unfunded stages of development, the target audience is rarely the gamer. The announcement is a signaling mechanism aimed squarely at investors and prospective.
Wow. Okay, let's break down that signaling mechanism. How does announcing a fake game help with investors?
Well, for a publicly traded entity, perception often dictates valuation. Announcing a high-profile partnership with a respected developer like Saber to utilize a globally recognized IP, it artificially inflates the perceived robustness of Paramount's gaming portfolio.
It makes the division look aggressive, forward-thinking, highly lucrative.
Exactly. This type of strategic posturing is especially common when a company is trying to make itself look more attractive during the courtship phase of a massive acquisition or merger.
So they were essentially dressing up the house before putting it on the market.
Exactly.
That makes the announcement a purely financial one. And what about the talent acquisition side?
The AAA game development sector faces a chronic shortage of top-tier engineering and art talent. If a studio needs to hire 200 senior programmers, environment artists, and combat designers, they cannot recruit them by saying, hey, come work on an unannounced, risky prototype.
Right. No one wants that job.
They need to publicly broadcast a prestige product. An announcement that promises the biggest Avatar game ever acts as a massive recruitment.
Oh, I see. It attracts the very talent required to actually build the game they just announced.
Yes. The tragic irony in this scenario is that the corporate merger halted the funding before the studio could even staff up the development floor.
It is a fascinating, if somewhat predatory, industry practice.
Very much so.
Now, the YouTuber does attempt to offer a brief concession here, mentioning that the gaming slate isn't entirely wiped out.
Oh, the fighting game.
Yeah, they bring up the Avatar Legends fighting game. It has suffered delays, but the source notes it is slated for release in a few months.
Right. And surprisingly, the YouTuber is somewhat optimistic about its quality, acknowledging that it looks mechanically sound and will likely please the hardcore fighting game.
But there is a massive gulf between a successful niche title and a mainstream blockbuster.
Wow, huge.
The YouTuber hits on that exact limitation. A 2D fighting game, regardless of how meticulously balanced its combat systems are, appeals to a highly specific, relatively small demographic.
It simply cannot fill the cultural void left by the cancellation of a sprawling, narrative-driven AAA RPG.
No, the general audience wants to explore the world, not just memorize frame data and combo inputs.
This disparity in scale highlights a deeper structural issue at the inability to execute a massive general audience project combined with the reliance on smaller niche. It points to a fundamental breakdown in trust
Between the corporate check writers at Paramount and the creative leadership at Avatar Studios.
Yes, it suggests the executives no longer believe the creatives can successfully helm a property of that magnitude.
Which serves as the perfect transition into the most emotionally volatile segment of this deep dive. Because if the fandom was frustrated by corporate vaporware, that anger pales in comparison to the reaction generated by the rumors surrounding the original creators.
Oh boy.
Yeah. This brings us to the third front, creative control, and a piece of alleged inside baseball that is actively fracturing the community.
We are shifting focus from the cold calculus of corporate ledgers to the highly subjective, often messy realm of creative vision and legacy management.
So the source video unleashes these long-withheld rumors regarding Mike and Brian, the original architects of the animated universe.
To establish the baseline here, the fandom knows that the creators were originally tapped to showrun the live-action Netflix adaptation.
Right, but they abruptly exited the project well into development, and the public relations narrative at the time relied on the standard Hollywood crutch of, quote, creative difference.
A phrase designed specifically to conceal the actual conflict while allowing both parties to save face.
Exact. But this YouTuber claims to have pierced that PR veil. The source alleges that the creators did not voluntarily walk away. They were explicitly fired by Netflix.
Wow.
And the catalyst for this alleged termination is what has the fan base completely up in arms.
The pitch that broke the camel's back.
Yes. The rumor asserts that the creators pitched a storyline where Uncle Iroh, and remember, this is arguably the moral center of the entire franchise, a character synonymous with wisdom, tea, and unconditional support, would be revealed as evil.
That is wild.
Right. The pitch allegedly involved Iroh betraying the core cast halfway through the live-action series.
And what was their supposed justification for this radical character assassination?
The source claims their attitude was essentially, we've already spent years making the original Avatar series. We have no interest in doing a shot-for-shot remake. We want to do something completely new.
If we zoom out and look at the mechanics of adaptations, this rumor perfectly encapsulates the perpetual tension inherent in legacy.
I really want to explore that tension because the YouTuber frames this alleged pitch as an apocalyptic creative misstep, claiming it would have been more damaging than the infamous M. Night Shyamalan live-action movie.
Speaking of Shyamalan, the source drops another massive contrarian claim there.
Yes, they state that Mike and Brian were heavily involved, quote, beat for beat, in the production of that movie, which directly contradicts the long-held fan consensus that Shyamalan unilaterally ruined the adaptation while ignoring the creator's input.
If that specific claim is true, it requires a complete rewriting of the fandom's historical narrative.
Totally. But returning to the Iroh rumor, it highlights a profound psychological friction between the artist and the audience.
Absolutely. When a creator lives with the universe for decades, the prospect of meticulously recreating their past work in a new medium feels stagnant.
Yeah, the artistic impulse is to deconstruct, to subvert, to explore the negative space they left untouched the first time around.
In their minds, taking a benevolent mentor figure and exploring a timeline where his darker impulse else's win out is a thrilling creative exercise.
But the audience isn't looking for a creative exercise. The audience is looking for emotional validation.
Precisely. The fandom does not view these characters as malleable narrative. They view them as foundational pillars of their own development.
Right. To the fans, Iroh's unwavering goodness is not just a character trait. It is a comforting archetype.
When a creator attempts to subvert that archetype, the audience doesn't perceive it as an plot. They experience it as a direct betrayal of their emotional investment.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source video makes a highly specific comparison here that illustrates your point perfectly. They say that if you thought the backlash to The Last Jedi was intense, the reaction to an evil Iroh would have been catastrophic.
It is the most analytically sound comparison in the entire video. The Last Jedi is the ultimate modern case study of this dynamic.
For sure.
A writer-director took a universally revered paragon of virtue, Luke Skywalker, and deliberately subverted audience expectations by portraying him as a cynical, defeated, and deeply flawed hermit.
And from an academic storytelling perspective, deconstructing the myth of the infallible hero is a completely valid choice.
But a massive vocal segment of the Star Wars fandom utterly rejected. They interpreted the creative subversion as a malicious desecration of their childhood icon.
That makes total sense. But let me play devil's advocate regarding the veracity of the YouTuber's claim for a second.
Go for it.
As someone who analyzes media narratives, my alarm bells are ringing regarding the psychological validity of this specific rumor. With the original creators, the people who painstakingly built the redemptive arc of Prince Zuko, which relies entirely on Iroh's unwavering morality, truly pitch a mustache-twirling betrayal just to stave off boredom.
You are questioning the origin of the narrative, which is vital when analyzing internet rumor mills.
Yeah, it feels almost too perfectly engineered to trigger maximum outrage. It sounds less like a legitimate Hollywood pitch and more like the kind of boogeyman story angry fans tell each other to validate their current frustration.
Is it possible that the original pitch was actually...
That's what I'm thinking. Perhaps exploring more of Iroh's canon past as a ruthless Fire Nation general who laid siege to Bussing Say.
And as that pitch leaked and traveled through the internet telephone game, all the nuance was stripped away until it devolved into they wanted to make him a villain. The mechanics of online echo chambers almost guarantee that outcome. Nuance is the enemy of engagement. A complex discussion about a character's murky past doesn't generate clicks or passionate YouTube. A binary claim of absolute betrayal does.
Right.
However, whether the evil Iroh rumor is a literal transcription of a boardroom meeting, a gross exaggeration of a flashback sequence, or complete hyperbolic fiction, its functional impact on the community is identical.
It acts as an accelerant.
Yes. It feeds directly into a broader narrative that the fandom is aggressively constructing, a narrative that the creators have lost their touch, and that the studio is descending internal chaos.
Which brings us to the operational reality of that alleged chaos, and Section 4 of our deep dive, the mismanagement allegation.
This is where the video pivots from debating creative choices to auditing the studio's fundamental competence.
Right, we are transitioning from the hypothetical, what they might write, to the concrete, how they actually operate.
So what are the specific claims here?
Well, the YouTuber cites a specific article from Night's Edge Media and bolsters it with their own independent sources to make a sweeping, damning claim. Avatar Studios is suffering from gross, systemic mismanagement.
The core allegation is that the leadership simply does not understand how to establish or maintain a functional production pipeline,
resulting in an absolute inability to deliver projects on schedule or on budget.
When you look at the evidence presented thus far, the indefinite delay of the fighting game, the corporate cancellation of the ambitious ARP, and the bizarre situation of Seven Havens allegedly languishing on a...
It begins to weave a cohesive, albeit grim, tapestry of operational failure.
And the YouTuber takes this alleged operational failure to its most extreme conclusion, right?
Oh yeah, they drop what we can call the doomsday. They claim that Paramount executives have lost all faith, and their intention is to fire the original creators, Mike and Brian, at the earliest contractual opportunity.
The purported strategy is to either install entirely new corporate management over the IP, or, barring that, to dissolve Avatar Studios entirely, under the belief that the studio possesses no viable internal direction without its founder.
This specific type of organizational collapse points directly to a well-documented concept in organizational psychology and business management, the Peter Principle.
Ah, yes, the Peter Principle.
I am somewhat familiar with the concept, but break down the mechanics of the Peter Principle as it applies to the specific Hollywood scenario.
Sure. The Peter Principle, formulated by Dr. Lawrence J. Peter, posits that within any hierarchical organism, employees tend to be promoted based on their success in their current, rather than their apt to the role they are.
Okay, so they keep moving up until they hit a wall.
Consequently, they continue to rise through the ranks until they reach a position where they are no longer competent, their level of incompetence.
Right. They excel at one specific skill, get promoted into management, and suddenly find themselves required to use an entirely different different set of skills they never possessed.
Oh, that is a brutal framework to apply to the entertainment industry, but it fits perfectly.
It really does. The original creators wrote and directed an absolute masterpiece of an animated series in the mid-2000s. They proved they were generationally talented storytellers.
So years later, to capitalize on the Revive IP, the corporate parent rewards them by promoting them to be the co-CEOs of an entire multimedia studio.
And that is where the breakdown occurred. The daily mechanics of being a brilliant showrunner are completely divorced from the daily mechanics of being a studio executive.
It's classic Peter principle applied to Hollywood. You make a masterpiece of a show, so they promote you to the CEO of a studio, a job you might not actually have the training for.
Right. When you're a showrunner, you are in the trench. You are reviewing storyboards, punching up dialogue, directing voice actors in the booth, and making sure the emotional arc of an episode lands.
But when you are the head of Avatar Studios, you aren't writing dialogue. You are managing human resources for a massive staff.
You are negotiating licensing terms with external video game developers. You are balancing hundreds of millions of dollars across multiple departmental budgets.
You are sitting in boardrooms defending your profit and loss statements to Viacom and Paramount executives.
Scaling talent is arguably the most difficult maneuver in Hollywood. Assuming that a brilliant artist will naturally evolve into a brilliant corporate manager is a fallacy that has doomed countless vanity studios.
If the Night's Edge media reports are accurate, it doesn't mean Mike and Brian suddenly lost their creative genius. It simply means they were tasked with building and running a massive corporate infrastructure, a highly specialized logistical discipline, when their true, undeniable talent lies in crafting narrative and character.
And that alleged operational mismatch has fostered a profound, almost toxic sense bear within the fan base.
The source video acts as a tour guide through this communal depression.
Yeah, the YouTuber describes the fan reaction on social media, specifically noting that users are holding literal performative funerals for the franchise on Twitter.
The community is exhausted by the relentless cycle of delays, cancellations, and alarming rumors.
The video even includes a specific moment of vindication for another content creator, a YouTuber named Mr. Teal.
The shifting of consensus within a fandom is always a volatile process.
It's nuts. So the context provided is that Mr. Teal posted a massive critical rant months ago predicting this exact scenario of systemic mismanagement.
And the source acknowledges that at the time, Mr. Teal was subjected to intense vitriol and harassment from the fandom for daring to be so negative about the beloved.
But now, the host of our source video is essentially issuing a public apology, stating that Mr. Teal was completely 100% accurate regarding the studio's operational flaw.
To the extent that the host scrapped their own planned video on the topic because Mr. Teal had already definitively diagnosed the problem.
It illustrates how rapidly a passionate, protective community can pivot from blindly defending their parasocial relationship with the creator to complete, cynical disillusionment when the output fails to materialize.
But stepping away from the fandom's emotional whiplash, if I am a Paramount executive looking at this situation, I see an absolute impossible catch-22.
Right. The YouTuber explicitly states in the video, the fans probably won't get behind anything Avatar makes if the original creators aren't helming.
The community demands the founder's involvement, seal of authenticity.
Yet in the very same breath, the video exhaustively details how those exact founders are allegedly running the studio into the ground, mismanaging pipelines, and alienating the corporate parent.
It is the ultimate executive paradox.
How do you possibly solve that puzzle?
Yeah.
If they retain the original creators to appease the hardcore fans, the studio allegedly continues to hemorrhage money, miss deadlines, and fail to scale the franchise.
But if they fire them to bring in competent operational management, the fandom immediately rejects the new product as inauthentic boycott.
It looks like a completely terminal scenario for the executives in charge.
It is perhaps the most complex not to entangle in modern franchise management. How do you successfully transition a property away from its visionary founders and integrate it into a sustainable corporate machine without completely alienating the core audience that generates your revenue?
Historically, very few franchises have executed that transition smoothly.
Very few indeed.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the endgame of our deep dive. With the fandom holding digital funerals, anonymous hackers holding the next major animated release hostage, and rumors of corporate dissolution dominating the discourse, we have to examine the ultimate trajectory of the franchise.
Right. The YouTuber attempts to synthesize all this chaos into a stark binary prediction for the...
It operates like a choose-your-own-adventure, but limited to only two potential ends.
The two time, a very common framing device in fandom doomsday.
Okay, let's break down timeline 1, which we can safely label the bad ending.
Oh, the bad end.
Yeah. The YouTuber asserts that the entire future hinges on the Seven Havens hack. If the hacker follows through on their threat and leaks the master files, the YouTuber declares the franchise is unequivocally, quote, dead.
Dead is an incredibly finite term to apply to a multi-million-dollar intellectual property.
It is an extreme diagnosis. The specific prediction is that the fandom will inevitably consume the leaked content via illegal stream.
They might even enjoy the show, but because that consumption doesn't translate into quantifiable, monetized metrics for the studio, Paramount executives will slam the brakes on all future investment.
The IP will be forced into corporate hibernation, put on ice for 5 to 10 years.
A punitive, financially mandated dormancy.
Right. And the YouTuber goes further, mapping out the sociological fallout of this hibernation. They predict the fan base will aggressively contract, reverting to its pre-2020 state.
The video specifically references the Netflix hype wave of 2020, which was a massive cultural event.
Yeah. During the pandemic lockdowns, the original series dropped on streaming, and millions of new viewers, a massive general audience, discovered or rediscovered the show,
creating an explosion of renewed relevance. It was a lightning-in-a-bottle moment of cultural resurgence that fundamentally altered the studio's perceived value.
But the YouTuber's fear is that if the franchise goes on ice for a decade, that entire general audience will simply forget it exists.
The cultural momentum will vanish.
Only the truly hardcore, entrenched fans will remain. And the grimmest part of the prediction, when Paramount finally decides to take the IP off life support 10 years from now, the original creators will be long gone.
New, purely corporate management will take over, and they might, as the video bluntly warns, ruin it, just like what Disney did to Star Wars.
Oof. There are several layers of franchise economics to unpack in that specific time. Primarily, we need to interrogate the concept of a franchise going on.
The YouTuber frames this as a death sentence, but from a purely analytical historical standpoint, is a period of dormancy actually detrimental?
Well, the source video certainly treats it as the ultimate failure.
I understand the anxiety, but the source's own framing of the 2020 Netflix hype wave actually provides the counterargument. When a dormant, completed property suddenly spikes in popularity due to algorithmic placement on a streaming service, its corporate valuation artificially inflates overnight.
Right. Executives look at the massive pandemic viewership metrics and experience a kind of gold rush mentality.
They declare, we need an interconnected cinematic universe, we need 5 simultaneous video games across different genres, we need multiple animated spin-offs, we need to build an entire dedicated studio.
They see the massive engagement and immediately want to build a content pipeline to monetize it continuously.
Exactly. But that executive reaction creates completely unsustainable, unrealistic expectations for multimedia output.
The IP was never originally designed to function as an industrial assembly line, producing content year-round. It was crafted as a finite, highly specific narrative.
So applying that logic to timeline 1, if the hack happens, studio shuts down, and the franchise takes a 5 to 10 year break.
I have to push back hard on the YouTuber's apocalyptic, doom-laden frame. Isn't intellectual property truly dead if it simply stops producing new material for a while?
Or is that dormancy actually the natural, healthy resting heart rate of a narrative?
Right. If we look at the original run of the show, it aired, it told a complete story, it was universally praised, and then it ended. It went away.
You are describing the concept of brand preservation through scarcity.
Exactly. We have been conditioned to believe that if a brand isn't constantly generating new content, it is failing.
But maybe the healthiest possible outcome for a story is to step out of the spot.
Let the audience actually miss it. Allow brand fatigue to dissipate. And wait until a new generation of creators actually has a profound, necessary thematic statement to make.
Rather than forcing out a mediocre AAA game or a rushed movie every fiscal quarter just to appease shareholders and feed the content.
That is a highly grounded analytical perspective. The hyper-consumerist model demands perpetual motion. If the machine stops, it's broken.
But the artistic and long-term brand management view is that absence preserves legacy. However, to fully represent the source material, we must also acknowledge timeline 2.
Right, which the YouTuber offers as a brief, fleeting glimmer of hope amidst the panic.
A good ending.
The good end. It is noticeably shorter and far more precarious. The parameters are essentially, if the hacker blinks and there is no leak.
If the niche fighting game manages to release and exceed commercial expectations.
And if Seven Havens gets a legitimate, fully marketed rollout and is critically and commercially successful, then the franchise survives and continues to expand.
It is an incredibly fragile path to success. It requires multiple, highly volatile, independent variables to all resolve positively at the exact same time.
A malicious hacker has to voluntarily surrender their leverage.
A delayed fighting game has to capture a mainstream audience it wasn't designed for.
And a highly anticipated animated sequel has to flawlessly stick the landing, despite the alleged severe internal mismanagement at the studio producing it.
It feels less like a viable business strategy and more like asking the executives to successfully thread a needle while riding a roller.
It perfectly captures the profound anxiety of the modern fan. The listener of that YouTube video is left in a state of high tension, acutely aware of the fragility of the media ecosystem and feeling completely powerless over the future of the art they love.
And that profound anxiety brings us to the end of our journey today. Let's execute a quick recap, because we have dissected a massive amount of complex, interlocking systems from this single source.
We began with a very real, literal digital hostage situation, where hackers are threatening to prematurely detonate the highly anticipated Seven Havens project,
exposing the terrifying fundamental vulnerabilities of decentralized Hollywood distribution pipeline.
From that external cyber threat, we pivoted to internal corporate reality, examining the Phantom AAA RPG.
We explored how it was announced to the world primarily as a signaling tool for investors and talent, only to become a casualty of the Paramount Skydance merger and the ruthless financial audits of corporate apps.
We then waded into the murky, highly subjective waters of creative control, dissecting the explosive rumor that the original creators wanted to turn the beloved Uncle Iroh into a villain.
This allowed us to highlight the intense, often irreconcilable friction between a natural desire to avert their own work and a fandom's desperate need, nostalgic, emotional,
which naturally transitioned into the allegations of deep, systemic operational failure at Avatar Studio. We utilized the Peter Principle to explore how elevating brilliant, generationally talented storytellers into complex executive management roles can paralyze a production pipeline.
And finally, we analyzed the looming threat of the franchise going into corporate hymen, challenging the paralyzing fear fans have of their beloved universe fading back into obscurity or being handed over to corporate mercy.
It is a dense, intricate web of modern media problems. It serves as a comprehensive anatomy of a modern franchise in the midst of a multifaceted crisis.
And to you, the listener, this exhaustive breakdown is exactly why we do these deep dives.
Taking a passionate, perhaps slightly hyperbolic, rumor-filled YouTube rant and rigorously dissecting the mechanisms beneath the emotion reveals so much.
It elevates the conversation beyond mere fandom drama.
It provides a stark window into the incredibly complex, often messy realities of modern media consolidation, the terrifying vulnerabilities of remote cybersecurity, and the immense, sometimes suffocating financial pressure of fan expectations. Oh, and before I forget.
Oh, yeah, the sign-off prompt.
Right. The source video ended with a prompt telling viewers to drop a, quote, "Thank Mr. Zuko" in the comments if they made it to the end of the rant. It's a fun, slightly absurd little community nod, so consider that officially noted on our end.
A brief, necessary reminder of the genuine spirit and shared love that birthed all this intense passion and panic.
Precisely. Now, we've spent this entire deep dive analyzing the mechanics of keeping a massive franchise alive against impossible odds. But as we sign off, I'll let you take us out. Based on everything we've unpacked regarding the intense pressure to constantly produce, what is the core question we should be asking ourselves about the nature of these stories?
If we look closely at the root cause of this entire panic, it stems from the sheer terror that the franchise isn't producing enough, that the games are canceled, the studio might dissolve, the movies are perpetually delayed. We currently operate in a cultural paradigm where every successful story is automatically expected to metamorphose into a massive, endless, self-sustaining multimedia empire. We demand sequels, prequels, spin-offs, AAA games, and interconnected cinematic universe. But perhaps we need to interrogate that demand. What if the healthiest, most respectful outcome for a beautifully crafted narrative isn't a dedicated corporate studio, a fighting game, and a mandatory 10-year multi-platform content roadmap? What if the absolute greatest gift a franchise can ever receive is simply the dignity of an